Hello and welcome to the My School channel. My name is Angela, and in this video we're going to continue the topic by topic video lessons for governments. So we began with the topic Introduction to Government and Basic Concepts, and now we are moving on to the second segment of the video where we are going to be discussing basic concepts such as power, authority, legitimacy and sovereignty. Please don't go anywhere, stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the My School channel. As I said earlier, we're going to be discussing power, authority, legitimacy, and sovereignty. So let's dive right into it. Alright, so we're going to begin with power. Power is the ability to influence the behavior of others through the use of sanctions or reward. So that's the definition of power. So what's important about this concept of power is the ability to influence the behavior of others using positive or negative rewards or punishments. So you are trying to change the behavior of somebody to suit your own interests in this particular situation. That's how you define power. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, sanctions in politics can either be positive when we're talking about rewards or negative when we're talking about punishments. So sanctions is very important when we're discussing power. Political leaders can influence others by offering rewards like wealth or honor. For example, when they're contesting for election, they can offer rewards to make sure that you vote for them during the election. So they can use reward like wealth or honor given to the person who does their bidding, or to supporters. Or they can threaten to withhold these rewards from dissenters, those who do not support their political cause. Then the ability to control actions through promises or threats is a common tactic used by political leaders to maintain power. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. So now we're going to be talking about the sources of power, where power is gotten from. So power can be gotten from the Constitution. This sort of power is regarded as political power. It can be derived from the Constitution if a person follows the dictates of the Constitution and goes through the election process. So this sort of power is usually legal. Then another source of power is coercion. So power can be acquired through the use of force, especially during the military era when people made use of force to make sure that the people in the society did what is expected of them by these military leaders. Another source of power is charisma. So power can also be acquired by possessing charisma and the ability to inspire and motivate followers. Then we are talking about Adolf Hitler of Germany. Remember, he made powerful speeches that made people to believe in his cause and what he talked about. So it's because he possessed that charisma. So that's why he had that power over the people. Then another source of power is economic resources. So power can also be acquired through money and property. So when you have a lot of wealth, you are able to influence the political activities within that country, right? Because you can offer the reward of wealth to people who do what you expect of them to do. Then another source of power is through position of authority. So it's important to understand that authority and power are complementary. One cannot do without the other. And so whenever you're in a position of authority, you also have certain degree of power conferred upon you, and you have to exercise that power. So position of authority is another source of power. And lastly, inheritance can be seen as a source of power. In a monarchy or aristocracy, power can be acquired through inheritance. So the king or the queen can pass power on to his or her heir. So now let's move on to the next slide. So now we're going to be discussing the forms of power. The first form of power is political power. So this type of power comes from the people and the Constitution. Elected officials are among those people who possess political power. So our presidents, governors, and those people in the National Assembly, they all possess political power. Then another form of power is economic power. So this type of power is based on economic resources. Individuals use the economic resources to influence the decisions of others, especially in political matters. So all of these people possess economic power. So again, with that example, where people who are contesting for election can use their wealth to get political followers, people who vote for them during the election, those people possess economic power and they are using it to their advantage. So another form of power is military power. So this power is held by the army, the navy, and the air force, who have access to instruments of violence that can be used to overthrow a civilian government or to defend the state against external aggression. So you can see it has two forms. It can be used to defend the state against economic aggression, or it can be used to overthrow a civilian government. Here it is positive, in the other sense it is negative. So power is not necessarily negative, it can be positive in some sense. Now let's move on to the next form of power. We have physical power. So this involves the use of force or strength to compel obedience. The results of this power can lead to discomfort or even a disastrous end. So when you're using your physical strength to overpower someone else, you are making use of physical power. So these are the 4 forms of power we have. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. We're going to be talking about authority. Authority is different from power. Authority refers to the legal right to make and enforce laws or policies that citizens must abide by. So this is different from power because power implies that you have to compel people to obey the rules and regulations you're enforcing on them. But authority is the legal right that is conferred on that person or that body to ensure that citizens obey the rules and regulations. So that's the difference. While power implies compulsion, authority implies that there is a legal right given on this particular body to ensure the citizens obey the rules and regulations of the society. Let's move on to the next slide. Unlike power, which can be enforced through coercion, authority is based on the acceptance of the right to rule, often granted by the people. So for power, it implies coercion. It implies that this person has to coerce members of the society to obey whatever he deems to be the rules in the society. But authority requires the acceptance of the right to rule. The people have to say, okay, you have the right to rule us, to tell us what to do. That's when authority is at play. Then authority implies the acceptance of the right to rule given by the people, regardless of the sanctions. So there may be sanctions attached to authority, but these sanctions are accepted by the people. They accept the fact that if they do something wrong, those people in position of authority has the right to sanction them, to punish them for their wrongdoing. In a democratic system, both power and authority ultimately originate from the consent and will of the people. This is different from other societies where democracy is not practiced, where the people are not allowed to partake in the decision-making of the country. When we are talking about a military regime or an absolute monarchy, where the people are not allowed to partake in the decision-making process, power and authority may be 2 different concepts. But in a democratic society, power and authority are similar because they are both derived from the constitution and the will and the consent of the people. So let's move on to the next slide. All right, now we're going to talk about the sources of authority. You can derive authority from the customs and traditions of the people. So most traditional rulers like the Obas, the Obis, the Emirs possess traditional authority. So when we're talking about pre-colonial Nigerian society, these different entities, the Obas, the Obis, and the Emirs, they derived their authority from the customs and traditions of their people. So another source of authority is rational or legal authority. Authority can also be gotten from the constitution of the country. This means that whoever is elected according to the dictates of the constitution can have legal authority. Then we also have charismatic authority, where authority is derived from the special and unique qualities of an individual that is appealing to the common people. So such individual can gain the acceptance of the people as a result of this. We can think of Peter Obi. During the previous election, he had some form of authority. It was charismatic because he had special and unique qualities that were appealing to the people. And so this means that he had charisma. He derived his own authority from the charisma that he exuded. Then another source of authority is consent of the people. So the people may decide to invest in a particular person and choose him or her as their leader. So such person has gotten the acceptance of the people and thus possess authority. So these are the sources of authority. Now let's move on to the next slide. All right, so we're going to be talking about the types of authority. The first one is traditional authority. This is when authority is vested in traditional rulers who exercise their power based on the established customs and traditions of their people. Then another type of authority is charismatic authority. So this type of authority is based on the leader's exceptional abilities, which inspire loyalty among their followers. Again, we have the example of Peter Obi, who had this special leadership quality that inspired followers from all around Nigeria. The third type of authority is legal authority. So this type of authority is exercised through the three organs of government and is derived from the constitution of a modern democratic state. We're talking about power that has been conferred on the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary in a particular society. Then the next type of authority is political authority. So this sort of authority is conferred on anybody who holds a certain political office in a country. So such person has the authority, the legal right to enforce obedience from the people that is under his care. So another type of authority is delegated authority. So this sort of authority is transferred to someone to exercise functions and responsibilities in certain areas. So this sometimes occur in the civil service. Sometimes the administrative unit may confer some form of authority on a particular group of people to conduct a particular investigation or do a particular thing within that civil service or even in different public agencies in the country. So in that sense, you are delegating authority to a person or a group of people. So that is delegated authority. Then another type of authority is technical authority. So this authority is based on the level of expertise that an individual has acquired on the job. It's the type of authority that is recognized by peers and subordinates in that particular field. So if you are working in a particular field, maybe in a scientific field, and you have knowledge and expertise on a particular area, and you can say, I have authority on this area and I can speak on this particular matter because I have some level of expertise or experience in this particular area. So when we're talking about that, we're talking about technical authority. So these are the types of authority we have in a society. So now let's move on to the next slide. So now I'm going to talk about the differences between power and authority. So sometimes we may confuse these two different concepts. It's important to learn to differentiate between the two of them. It's a very common question in your external examinations. So one difference is that power is the ability to influence the behavior of others through the use of sanctions or rewards. Sanctions is very important when we're talking about power and the ability to influence the behavior of other people. Authority is the legal right to make and enforce laws or policies that citizens must abide by. Legal right is a very important phrase in that definition. Another difference is acceptance. While power can be legitimate or illegitimate, authority is dependent on the acceptance of the people. When we're talking about legitimacy, we're talking about acceptance. We're going to discuss that later on. But for now, legitimacy is acceptance. So it is not dependent on the acceptance of the people. It's dependent on coercion, the ability to compel people to obey you. But authority is dependent on the acceptance of the people. The people have to say, yes, you have the right to lead me. So another difference between power and authority is delegation. Power cannot be delegated because it is not legal, first of all. So if something is not legal, you can't delegate or transfer that onto somebody else because there's no means by which you can transfer it. No legal means, no legal method by which you can transfer that power onto someone else. But authority can be delegated with legitimized responsibility. According to the rules and regulations that govern that particular society, you can transfer the authority to someone else. Then, another difference between power and authority is sanctions. While both of them imply that there is sanction that comes along with obedience or disobedience, power is dependent on the ability to withhold reward or administer or remove sanction. It is dependent on that. If you cannot withhold reward or administer reward, there is no way you can regulate the behavior of other people. It's dependent on the ability to give or remove something from the people you are trying to control. Authority, on the other hand, is legitimate. The sanctions that come with authority is not as severe as that of power. So the reason it is not severe is because it is not designed to maintain that control over the people, but rather it's designed to maintain order within that particular society. So it is not as severe as that of power. So that's another difference between power and authority. So we've come to the end of this segment. I believe it was enlightening and educative. If you want to continue on this journey with us, please go down to the link in the description below, click on it. It will take you to the My School website, where you can subscribe to our topic by topic video lesson and continue on this journey with us. I believe you've enjoyed this content. If yes, please do not forget to hit the like button, click on the subscribe button, and lastly tap on the notification bell to get informed as soon as we release the next videos.